Wonderful to have you here, and we are perhaps finishing a chapter which is teaching the very highest meditation that leads to the very highest form of love we've learned about in Jewish mysticism. The very highest form of love we've learned about in Jewish mysticism, and that is called love like gold. Love like gold. So in this class, we've been learning about Jewish meditation for a few years now, if you've been with us, and it's all online. If you want to join, there's been 150,000 hours of learning since we started this Kabbalah class, so many people...
150,000 hours.
They don't believe me! It's so much learning, they don't believe me, they're laughing at me here. I will print out, and I'll bring for you, the YouTube stats of Intro to Kabbalah 1 through 5 alone, and I'll show you the hours. That's over 150,000 hours of learning. I kid you not, it's gone viral.
Oh, that means like I have an hour and he has an hour type thing.
Yeah, if you add up all the people that have learned all the time since we started, it's 150,000.
I thought you meant that we've been here for 150,000 hours.
Oh, okay, no. It might feel like 150,000 hours of confinement with Cantor Smolash and the Tanya. But no, the aggregate learning of everyone that's learned on YouTube, not counting the people in the classes here, has been over 150,000 hours, which I think is good in and of itself. But that's believable. I don't have to provide evidence, apparently. Okay, good. We can move on. So we hope that you will join us, and we've learned how to meditate. And as we've learned, the point, the why of Jewish meditation is not to ascend, and just remain in a state of total enlightenment. Like if you see the Magen David behind me, which is a little sliced off, but you know what it looks like. That's that up arrow. So Eastern meditation has you do only the up arrow. You just keep ascending, until finally you reach a state where the world is not there for you. It was an illusion to begin with. You're beyond that, and that is your permanent status. That's an enlightened being in the East. Not in Judaism, an enlightened being, or a tzaddik, is someone that flows with the entire Magen David behind me, which has the up arrow and also the down arrow. So what we're doing is we're creating emotions, and that incorporates both the up arrow, which as we learned is Gvura, and the down arrow, which is Chesed. And we're including all those emotions in our work down here doing mitzvahs and Torah. And the emotions that we generate when we meditate serve as the wings that elevate our Torah and mitzvahs. So we create a home for God right down here. So you have to include the down arrow that's behind me in your whole practice, because that's the Jewish pathway. You don't just go up and stay there. You go up with up triangle, you come down with a down triangle, you go up and you have an enlightened experience, you bring that down and you bring it into an actual action, then you lift that piece of the physical world up again, and as we'll learn at the end of this chapter, that's a whole cycle that is forever the heartbeat of Judaism, and in fact the heartbeat of the universe. So when I look back on my days meditating in the Eastern style, it was missing that down arrow, and that's why although so many Jews are attracted to Eastern meditation because it's overtly spiritual, in the end, once you've mastered it, often you find there's something missing in your life because the world is a heartbeat. And if you're just going but and you're missing tum of the but tum, then there's an imbalance there. But let's go inside and remind everyone of what we've learned so far. For that, I'm going to share my screen. And this always takes a little bit of time for some reason. It is finicky. Yeah, you can just nod if you're seeing that online. We're all together. So this is love like gold. Love like gold. This love, as we said, is unique in that most loves come from the right side of this diagram that you're seeing. So if you want to come around and have a look, you can see. If you're not familiar, Marilyn, it's not on your page. On the right, I have all the attributes, Chochmah, Chesed, Netzach, etc., that correspond to the masculine side. On the left, I have Bina, Gvura, and Hod that correspond to the feminine side. All of my love so far have come inspired by my intellectual aspects, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, which is how I meditate. Then, by meditating on something like, I love chocolate, and guess who made chocolate? God did, so I'm going to love God. That's a very basic one, right? Or meditating on, I love my life comes from God, so I love God like my life, that's automatic. Whatever it is, we've learned these meditations that have inspired chesed, loving kindness, this next attribute to flow. My right side, my side of giving, sharing, bringing God into my life and sharing it. That's the flow of chesed, and that's the normal flow you'd use to meditate and create love. This love, as we learn, is an exception because it comes from the left side, from the side of gvura, of strength. And here, I'm not channeling the downward flow of the Magen David, I'm channeling the upward flow of the Magen David. Here, I'm not saying, I want to bring God down and share it and give it, and God wants to connect with me. Here I'm saying, there is no world. There's nothing here. Ultimately, God is alone now, just like before creation, and there's nothing to achieve here. I'm sick of this world. I'm done with it. I just want to be like a fire, like the flame on the right side, and rise up, even off the wick of my body, and reunite with my source. And what else matters? Torah and mitzvahs. That you can only do those in the world. The world doesn't exist, right? Growing and helping people. My physical being doesn't even exist. It's all an illusion. Forget it. It's the epitome of that wanting to leave the world. It's as close as we get, perhaps, to that Eastern-style meditation where the world is just non-existent. It was just an illusion. Just forget it. Just transcend it. And it's characterized by this fire, almost a lovesickness, to be one with the infinite so that I'm gone. Like the flame would be gone if it left off the wick. My soul would be gone if it went fully into this love like gold, love like fire. And I would be gone. And that's how we characterize this love. It's complete love from the left side, love of Gevura. And we showed a few, let me get back to here. We showed a few sets of images to explain the right and the left. Here we go. The first one was, as I said, normal love is chesed, loving kindness. This is from Gevura, from strength, because I want to elevate out of the world. I don't want to bring God down into the world. It also corresponded to gold versus silver. Normal love is like silver, but it's cool, it's static, it's placid. If I add fire to that, now I get gold. Gold is like the beauty of silver, but with an added restless, fiery color that it never stands still when you're looking at it, so to speak. So this love is like gold. We also talked about up and down, right? The male side is drawing God down into the world. The feminine side is rising up out of the world and resisting the urge to bring blessings into the world, but bringing the world up to meet God itself. We also talked about the Levi and the Kohen. I won't get into that, but a Kohen represents chesed. Kohen represents love, and that's that same right side, the loves that use chesed. This is the service of the Levim that was characterized by song. And when I sing, I'm trying to get to some other place, right? What's a love song? It's a song where I'm trying to get a place of yearning for someone, being distanced to being close to them, going somewhere else. So every love song is trying to bring you from your current state to something else, right? Every spiritual song is trying to bring you up to join with something beyond. That's what the service of the Levim was, of singing. And that is that love like gold that leaves the world, so to speak. And finally, fire and water. That love is often referred to as water. It flows down to the lowest place. It wants to reach everyone. It is rejuvenating and refreshing, causes life. This love is like fire that rises up, always trying to reunite with its source and even leaving the wick that it is burning on. That's burning on. As I said, in the end, we want to unite both of them. We want to have both. If you're online, you can see this beautiful Magen David, and it really is two triangles. And so we were just introduced to this concept of Rats of Ashok last week. Rats of Ashok, which means advancing up and then retreating down. Advancing up and retreating down. So where we are, yeah.
Go up with Gevura and then come down with Chesed?
Correct. Gevura is up,
Yeah, I know that. But
Chesed is down.
so we're always going in circles type thing?
You can call it a circle. You can call it a Magen David. You can call it a wave.
Okay.
Yeah, however you want to look at it. But it's a cycle.
Okay.
It's a cycle, yeah. Very good. So we were left with a question last week, because now we're all caught up to last week. Let me end my share. We learned about this love, but we have a problem, right? What's the problem? This love, if you really go into it, can even create something called kolot hanefesh, which is your soul actually expiring, a la Nadav and Avihu, who went to give a sacrifice at the wrong time, and their enthusiasm to be close to God, and they actually were incinerated, right? The most extreme version. It's recorded in the Torah itself. It can lead to kolot hanefesh, and then you can't do Torah mitzvahs. And anyways, even if I don't go to kolot hanefesh, if I'm sitting there and all I want to do is be one with God, and who cares about learning and mitzvahs and Torah and family and dishes, the world doesn't exist. Now I have a problem, because what is the point of the world? What is the point of us being here? To create a dira b'tachtonim, to create a home for God in the lowest. We started that in chapter 35, and we're going to get back to it next chapter. So if that's the whole point, if the whole point is this Magen David, and I go up to come down, how does this love help me? How am I going to use this love to elevate my mitzvahs, to learn more Torah, if all I want to do is just leave the world and be one with God? Now we get our answer here, and that is the boomerang effect that we need to employ and understand even in this type of love. Even when I'm convinced the world is nothing, the world is non-existent, it's not there, still I'm going to use this boomerang effect to use this love to come make a home for God here in my physical life, here with the physical objects around me. Any questions before we go into the text? Lots of questions, non-vocal, non-verbalized, it looks like. Okay, we'll start in the middle. K'mosh katuv b'sefer Yitzira v'im ratz libecha shuv lechad perush v'im ratz libecha hi shukat hanefesh shebalev b'chal himeni kashe mitgaberet umitlahevet umitlahetet b'mod mod ad klot hanefesh mamash lehishtapech el chek aviha chaye hachim baruch hu. Let's start. Dan, why don't you go ahead? This is as is written.
As it is written in Sefer Yetzirah, if your heart hastens, return to one. If your heart hastens refers to the craving of the soul, that is in the right side of the heart, the abode of the divine soul. When this craving predominates and bursts into flame and glows in such rapture that the soul is consumed with a desire, kilot hanefesh, to pour itself out into the embrace of its Father, its source, who gives one life.
So we've talked about the idea of Rats of Ashok, which is from Ezekiel's vision of the chariot, which beautifully we read on first day Shavuot, so that's coming up, that's Sunday morning. The Haftarah is actually this section of Ezekiel describing this vision of the chariot, and the Chayot that were advancing and retreating. They were like the flames of this bazak, of this crucible to refine gold, and the flames were jumping out and returning back like a bazak, and that's what the chayot, these angels, were doing. They were advancing and retreating all the time. There was nothing static about the spiritual source of the universe. When Ezekiel saw it, there was nothing static. Right? There was no sense that the best way of being is to rise up and be one with God. Everything about the source of the universe, as Ezekiel perceived it in his vision, in his prophetic vision, was always in flux, always changing, always following this motion of advancing and retreating. So we're going to learn from that in this meditation. And how do we do it? We return to the one, to Echad. If you want the whole spiel on Echad, go back to last class. We described that Yachid, that's just God alone. That's the highest form of oneness. Yachid, there's only God. Echad is one. I have one microphone here, right? It is one microphone, but it's divisible. I could take off the knobs. There's other microphones in the world. So what's the big deal about one? You'd think we wouldn't in the Shema say Ad Hashem Echad, we'd say Ad Hashem Yachid. Why do we pick one? It's such a weak word, right? And yet, it's exactly the Echad that we're working with. It's not Yachid that we have to return to, that there's only God and nothing else. It's Echad that, as we said, there's one God, the Aleph, in the seven heavens and the earth. That's the Chet, the eight. In all four directions, that's the Dalet of the Echad. And that we bring that oneness not up where it's Yachid, where it's obvious, there's only God. We bring it down here where it's not obvious, because there's a microphone and a Smolash and other people, and there's countries, and there's up and down. Here, in the world of multiplicity, that's where we return, and we create oneness down here. That's the key. So when you feel like you're just going to experience Kolot HaNefesh, that's when you return to the one, in the words of Sefer Yetzirah, and you bring God into Echad, not into Yachid. You bring God into this world where it looks like there's countless beings. ולצאת ממסרה בגוף הגופני וגשמי לדווקא בו יתברך. Go ahead, Doreen.
And to leave its confinement in the corporeal and physical body, to attach itself to him, blessed be he.
So that's the feeling I have. Klot nefesh. I'm a seeker. I want to be one with the infinite. I want to leave my physical body. I want to just be lost in the infinite. Then, azai zot yashiv el libo. Mama rabbeinu zichronam livracha ki al karachach ata chai.
Then one must take to heart the teaching of our sages of blessed memory. Despite yourself, you must live. Despite your craving for expiry in kliot hanefesh, you must nevertheless remain alive.
Right, so even though now I want to, even though now I want to basically leave my life and be one with infinity, be one with the Ein Sof, despite myself I have to live and bring that oneness down into Echad, into my world of many, many beings that are all tugging and pulling against each other, and make those twos into ones again. Make a holy moment with a mitzvah, with learning Torah, as we're doing.
I'm glad we got to this part.
The comment was, I'm glad we got to this part. Why is that?
Well, because this extreme desire to be with God, leave this world, sounds very oriental and self-sacrifice, suicide, ritual suicide.
Mm-hmm. God forbid. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was waiting for something to clarify.
Yeah. So you're a student of the Alter Rebbe. You knew he was going somewhere. Only one shoe had dropped, and so the comment is, I'm glad we got to this part. The first half of the chapter seemed like not even Tanya, right? Tanya's like, be a Beinoni. It's all about thought, speech, and action, right? Creating a home for God here with Torah mitzvahs. That's the point of everything. Suddenly, we're dealing with kolot hanefesh and leaving, and the world doesn't exist. It made no sense. That's why this is chapter 50 and not chapter 5, obviously, right? Because we have that instinct now. We know we're not done. And obviously the second half of the chapter is now about the shov, is about returning. So here we go. Liodira batachtonim, right? There's the big one from 35. We'll create a home for God in the lowest place. Le'achduto yiparech bivchinat gilui. Go ahead.
You must nevertheless remain alive in this body, to keep it alive for the purpose of drawing down the higher life force from the life of life. Blessed be he through the life-giving Torah. Through this there will be a dwelling place in the lower worlds and created beings for his blessed oneness in a revealed state. Just as in an ordinary dwelling, a person's identity is totally revealed, so will the true essence of the divine oneness be then revealed among the beings of this lower world.
Beautifully read, very nice, thank you, and welcome to our class, Marilyn.
Thank you.
So this is the point. Even though I want to leave, now I have to say, when I want to expire, what do? I return to the one. And now I start perhaps the most beautiful cycle of Rats of Ashok we have in the Tanya, where I've gone to the nth degree. I've gone where I almost have left my body, and now I come back down. I'll share two stories. I'll share one now that demonstrate this, and this is a story of the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, when he went for the first time to the Maggid of Mizrich, who was his teacher, his Rebbe, and when he came, he saw all the disciples, the holy society, so to speak, of the Maggid, all the other students, sitting and talking at a table about different levels of angels and different levels of sfirot and the quality of this and the love and awe with which they serve God and the sfirot, and they started getting worked up to be close to God, and their skin started turning white, and they started kind of losing touch with the world because they just kept going further and further until at a certain point, every one of them was just sitting in a state of rapture, of dveikus. Dveikus means cleaving to the infinite. And some of them were just quietly humming to themselves, some of them were shaking, some of them were just sitting stock still. And the Alter Rebbe is looking at this and he realizes in a few moments, if this goes on, some of them may actually expire from an intense state of total cleaving to the infinite, just total rapture with the beauty of the Ein Sof, until they heard some footsteps, and the Magid was coming, and they all sort of shook themselves out, and the Magid knew very well what was happening, just sat down calmly, gave a quick Devar Torah that the glory of God's here in the earth, and suddenly everyone was back, and they had come back from this state of holy rapture just to see the face of their teacher and to learn from him here down on the earth, and so it went. And the Alter Rebbe was so moved by that cycle that he saw of this intense group of people that were so connected to God that they would almost leave the world, and with his own eyes, they might have left their bodies and died. God forbid you don't do it. Don't try this at home. But then the Magid didn't walk in and say, "Good for you, my students, look how spiritual you are. Yeah, go ahead, go meet God." No. The Magid just sat down very calmly, said, "Okay, that's nice for the Ratzah, let's do it with the Shov. Now come back here, sit down at the table with me, let's learn some physical Torah, let's start, pick up a Shulchan Aruch and learn about the halacha of how long, how far from the top of mezuzah has to be, and we're going to infuse that light, that fire, back down into the world." And seeing how that Rats of Ashok worked, that was one of the things that inspired the Alter Rebbe to become a chassid of the Magid of Mizrich, right? That it's not just having an enlightened moment, it's then bringing that down for the next enlightened moment and bring it into the physical world. K'mo shnitbaer la'el, as explained above. At the bottom of K'mo shekatuv b'zohar HaKadosh l'meheveh echad b'echad perush shehayichud hanelem yeh bivchinat alma diskalia. Let's go online. Susan, you just joined us. Why don't you start? Let's go. Susan, Linda, Eleanor, Paula.
And is explained in the Holy Zohar, there will be one in one, meaning that the unity which is hidden, the one of the higher spiritual world or level, shall become an aspect of the revealed world, becoming manifest in the oneness of the lower world or level. So
the one in the one, the higher one, which is the higher unity, which is just Yachid. Higher unity means there really is only God. The creation really is just an illusion because God's the same before as after. It hasn't changed anything. There's just pure, unified infinity, and doesn't matter creation, no creation, nothing has changed. That's the higher Echad. That's what we rise up to try and be one with when we have this sense of love like gold. One within one, that one will come back down and will infuse the Echad, the lower one, the one of this world where God is one, but God's one with 600,000 Jews or 12 million Jews physically. We bring that oneness down here into the physical world. And the higher one becomes infused into the lower one because we are following this Magen David behind me. We're doing the Rats of Ashok. Is this sinking in? I've gone through the idea like 4 or 5 times already, so I just want to make sure it's sinking in, right? It's one of these. And now, in the past several chapters, we've gone through much of the Shema and its blessings, and part of the section of the last chapters, the last up till 50, was to look at how we use the forms of love we meditate on to infuse them into services, especially this idea of a reflected love, if you're here with us, that when someone loves me, I love them back, and so much more so with God, and how that flows into the Shema and its blessings. The first blessing where we learn, let's not go into it, it'll get too complicated, the Shema and its blessings, and the actual Shema itself where we say God is one and our soul rises up like the Jews leaving Mitzrayim, is totally united with God, and then I say Ve'ahavta, and you'll love, and I'm in a state where I really do love God. And how the blessings are there to get me to that state where I'm really there. I'm really feeling a oneness with God, united with God, that I love God, then to go and do Torah mitzvahs, right? Same thing. Now we're going to have one more point where we're going to attach this meditation not to the Shema that we say every day, but to the beautiful Lecha Dodi that we pray on Friday night. This is something I'll say personally is a big inspiration when I get to Friday night. If you work at a synagogue and you're busy preparing services and running around and dealing with musicians and sound systems and whatever, sometimes you get to Friday night and it's hard to now focus and pray because you're running a thing, you're running a production, so to speak. But if I take a moment, then I say, what's really here? It's just God here. There's nothing else here. And I have a sense, I want to leave all the outlines, and I want to leave all the technical stuff. I want to leave all the whatever, and just be one with God. Let's as a community, let's all pray and be with God. Now I can connect this to Lecha Dodi, and I'll show you how. It's beautiful. Top of 794. V'zeu shomrim Lecha Dodi v'chulu. Go ahead, Linda, if you want to unmute.
This is the meaning of the text. Come, my beloved, to meet the bride, Kala, denoting Kelot HaNefesh, Kala and Kelot being etymologically related. In this form of the love of God, one's Kelot HaNefesh should be expressed through causing my beloved to come, that is, through drawing down the beloved one, God himself, so the godliness will be revealed in this netherworld.
So here's Lecha Dodi. Here's what it is. Right? Lecha Dodi, the correct kala, come my beloved to greet the bride. Who's the beloved? That's God. That's the Ein Sof. That's Hashem. Right? We're saying, and we're addressing God. We're saying, come God, let's greet the kala. And who is the kala? The kala is Klal Yisrael. That's all of us. So God is greeting the kala. And how does kala relate to this? Kala has the same root as kalot hanefesh, as the extinction of the soul. And when we're saying, come God to greet the kala, come to greet me, to greet us, we're saying, I'm a kala. I'm in a state of kalot nefesh. I've prayed the whole week, and I've been in the physical world, but I got up and I did a prayer service, and I meditated, and I did mitzvahs, I gave a little bit of charity, all because I'm yearning to leave all this, and now I'm here, I walk in, and I'm in a state of burning desire to leave the world. I'm a kala. And when I'm a kala, what do? I say, Lecha Dodi, come my beloved to greet the bride. I'm drawing God down, right? Just like we said, they draw the one into the one. That's what we're doing Friday night with Lecha Dodi. We're the kala. We're the ones there that are burning with fire to rise up out of the world. But then instead of just going up, I'm going to draw that higher oneness down by saying, Lecha Dodi, come my beloved down to greet the bride down here, to greet Chabad. And then we go. And it's the most beautiful cycle of rising up and coming back down and uniting the higher one with the lower one. That's maybe the essence of Lecha Dodi. It's not the essence, it's the impetus of Lecha Dodi. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Easy and beautiful.
Easy.
וזה יובן מאמר רבותינו, זמרכם לברכה על כרכך אתה חי ועל כרכך וכולו. Go ahead, Eleanor, and then Paula.
With this one, we'll be able to understand the saying of our sages of blessed memory. Despite yourself, even against your will, you must live, and despite yourself, you must die.
And one more, Ve'ela ech yeh retzono.
What then should one's desire be?
All right, so yet another saying, despite yourself you live, and despite yourself you die. And that really is the feeling that when I'm in that state, that I've meditated, and all I want is to leave and to, God forbid, actually die, but you can get to that point. Okay, despite the fact that you want to die, you have to live. You have to come back down and reunite the one with the one, and force yourself to come back down. And now I'm here down in the lowest place, and I want to live because I'm focusing down. I want to be alive to put on tefillin the next day and to bake challah and to do a blessing. That's what I want. Now I have to say, okay, but I'm in the physical world, right? I want to reunite with God. I want to find that fire again and not get lost in working, earning money to do mitzvahs and raising a family and getting stuck in the physical. Now, despite my desire to live, I should try to rise up again. And it's the same thing. It's a roller coaster ride where I want to go up and leave, but then despite myself, I should come back down and live in the physical. And then I want to, make more money to do more mitzvahs and bake more challah, do more blessings. But no, just go up and find inspiration in this love like gold. And it really is the shape of a wave, of constant up and down.
Wouldn't that drive you kind of nuts, though, keep going up and down all the time?
It would. It would drive you kind of nuts. And that's why exactly, you're quoting exactly this this next piece. It says, "Uchmo shnitbaer b'makom acher, barichut al mishna zo, al karchat achai, be'ezrat chaye hachayim baruch hu." Why don't you go read this for me? Read this. This is
explained elsewhere at length with reference to the Mishnah. Despite yourself, you must live. With the help of the life of life, blessed be He, who enables one to cope with this compulsion to live despite yourself.
Right, so this is such a crazy roller coaster ride we're hearing. And imagine like living your whole life like this. Let me let Linda back in. Sorry, she must have dropped off. So how do we do it? To answer your question, with the help of the Blessed One, the Holy One, blessed be He.
That's why we don't go crazy.
That's why we don't go crazy, because God wants us to be on this ride. God has it planned out. And so even when I'm in the most extreme curve of trying to live despite myself and die despite myself, quote unquote, I'm relying on God, who has made this whole plan, and I know that I'm not without a partner who's helping me through this.
So us as so the Bainani is doing this all the time. What about a tzaddik? Is he always going up more than he's coming down, or?
That gets me to my next story. Question was, what about a tzaddik? Is a tzaddik up or down?
Plan for him, I guess.
I was going to say, where you go?
We're in sync. We're in sync is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So talking about tzaddik, who's the biggest tzaddik is Moshe, Moses.
He's always going up.
Always going up, you'd think, right? Always going up. So here's a story. When the Alter Rebbe was just getting established, there was an area in Minsk that was very, very intellectual and wanted nothing from Hasidus, wanted nothing from this crazy holiness. They had a lot of complaints. And they're also very brilliant people. So like the Alter Rebbe was a genius, but they were also geniuses. And they weren't so impressed by sheer genius, right? So it was a tough crowd. And, the Alter Rebbe finally, went to visit some of his Hasidim in Minsk, and the whole place was just ready to shred this new upstart genius, crazy spiritual guy, right? So they said, before we speak, we want to quiz him on halakha. We want to give him a test, because we're not even going to speak to somebody unless we know that they're really as brilliant as you claim this guy is, right? He'd written a whole Shulchan Aruch, he'd written a whole code of Jewish law. His name Shneor means two lights, and that was because he was an absolute genius in revealed Torah, one light, and an absolute genius in spiritual Torah, in Kabbalah and Hasidus, the second light. So his name Shneor meant he's two lights. So first we want to see Tachlis. They asked him every question they could find. Of course, he answered everything, because this is a person who could see through the entire Torah from the time he could read. Crazy level of super genius. So they were satisfied with that, and they said, now let's talk about this crazy Hasidus. And they had two big complaints. One was, what's with the prayers of the common people are just as important as the prayers of tzaddikim? Right, to get to your question, what's with God loves common people as much as tzaddikim? How can you say that? A Jew is a Jew, and of course a Jew is holy and important, but a tzaddik, a person who learns Torah 18 hours a day, a Torah scholar, we have to understand that they're different, right? God, of course, honors them more, loves them more, watches them more, and the people, the illiterate people, I know it's not their fault, they're poor, times are hard, they have no time to learn, but give me a break. How can you elevate a poor person and say that God loves when they get up and say Psalms without understanding the words as much as God loves the words of a Torah scholar or a tzaddik? They couldn't deal with that. Second complaint was, how can you say that a tzaddik has to do tshuva? Like, we understand the idea of tshuva, that normal people do sins and then they have to repair them, and come Yom Kippur they do tshuva. But a tzaddik is above that. You're going to talk about our tzaddikim and say they have to do tshuva too? What are you talking about? That's hearsay. Those are their main two complaints, and every other complaint was either one or the other, essentially. So the Alter Rebbe said, let me answer those questions at the same time with a teaching on the burning bush. So we know the story of the burning bush. Moshe was in the middle of the desert, and suddenly there's this miracle. He said, well, let me turn from here, right, and go see it. Asura na ver'e et hamar'e hagadol hazeh. Let me leave here and go to that place. And then he saw this bush that's burning. And the Alter Rebbe said, Moshe was a tzaddik. He was seeing miracles all the time, right? Well, he was already a tzaddik, and he grew up in Egypt where there was all kinds of magic and stuff. What was so special about this little bush that was burning and not being consumed? There's birthday candles that do that. You know, the ones where you get them for your kids and they blow and they come back and they blow, they come back and the kids are like, wow! So if I'm 4, I'm impressed. But this makes it into the Torah of all the miracles that happen. We hear about that Moshe, when the Pharaoh tried to cut his neck off, he went to cut his neck and it turned into marble and the sword broke, and so many other miracles, and angels were guiding his hands in the Midrash. And here we're hearing about this little bush that's burning, and it blows Moshe's mind. He's like, that's it, I'm convinced somehow. What is it about this burning bush? Why is it here? Something's wrong. And he says, and the Torah is so precise. What's with this word asurana? Let me leave here. Let me go from here. Let me turn from here. Like, can anyone explain why that's there? Why did Moshe say that? And why is that included in the Torah? Right? Just let me go see. Let me go see this wondrous little burning bush, right? Here's the answer. What is a tree? A tree is a Jewish person, right? It says that man is a tree of the field. Humanity is a tree of the field. A tree is always a person. So this was a person on fire. That's what the burning bush was, a person on fire. And there's 2 types of trees, says the Alter Rebbe. There's trees that produce fruit and trees that don't produce fruit. And what is that? A tree that produces fruit, that is a tzaddik, that is a Torah scholar. They're doing mitzvahs, they're learning Torah, they're making fruits down here, they're fruitful, people gather around and learn from the fruits. That's a tzaddik, that's your holy person. And what's this little bush? That was a tree that doesn't produce fruit. That's a poor peasant who, because they're living in poverty, hasn't had time to learn. They don't produce the same kind of Torah learning. Now, what's the wonder of the bush that keeps burning and is not extinguished? He says, that answers both your questions. When a person is on fire for God, when they want to rise up and unite with God, what does a tzaddik do? They go and they quench their thirst to unite with God by learning Torah. Because they can go deep into the sources, they can sit for hours and have the joy of being one with God. So they quench that fire. They quench that fire with their ability to do Torah, with their ability to do mitzvahs at such a high level, and to be aware of the godliness that's created here when they do a mitzvah. And so they're satisfied. They're satisfied and they extinguish their fire. But what's the bush with no fruit that just keeps burning? That's the common person. That's the common person that doesn't have the advantage of the big tzaddik and the big Torah scholar, because they can't quench the fire. They get up in the morning, they say psalms, they don't even know what it means. There's no way to quench their fire. And their fire keeps burning, and they just want to go up and up. And that's why God treasures the prayers of the holy people. And that's why Moshe said, Asurana. Why is that there? Because Moshe saw, he said, you know what? I'm a tzaddik. I don't burn the way these other people are burning. I have to now turn and leave this place. Asurana, let me leave this place. I have to leave my state I'm at and try and reach for the state that they're at. Because I'm the one who can learn Torah. I'm the one who can do mitzvahs. I'm sensitive to godliness. I can extinguish that fire by connecting with God. I have to do tshuva for the fact that I've been serving God at that level. And I have to leave my level, do tshuva, and aim for the level of a common person who's burning and it can't be extinguished. And when he finished his answer, there were no questions left, and he left Minsk with 400 new Hasidim. 400 new Hasidim, and not just people that were on the fence and then suddenly said, let me pick him as my Rebbe. He left with 400 Hasidim who had been vehemently opposed to Hasidus at all. And this one explanation changed their minds, and they became his own Hasidim, and they followed him. So that's Rats of Ashok, right? That even someone that is at that high level, they can quench it by then learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and they can extinguish the fire and come down, but then they have to still aim for that level where they want to go up. And even Moshe has to tshuva for the fact that he quenched the fire and now he has to go back up again himself. There's a level where even tzaddik can do this. Does that answer your question? The Alter Rebbe can answer your question.
That's a good story.
It's a good story. Both these stories, by the way, I heard this week from Toli Silverberg, so thanks, Toli, for your Tanya classes. It brings us to the end of this chapter, and it exhibits the paradox of serving God in this way according to Kabbalah, which is the reason the entire life is a cycle is because in order to create a home for God down here, what do I need? If I'm lost in the physical world, and I say, okay, dira b'tachtonim, make a home for God here, I'm going to earn a living so I can raise a family, I'm going to do mitzvahs so I can create a home for God, let me do more, let me focus on getting a really nice Kiddush cup and a really nice mezuzah. At a certain point, that's physical stuff, and I'm going to lose the ability to infuse it with emotion because I'm not inspired. I'm not going to really be able to create a home for God that's lit, that's beautiful, that's inspired. I'm not going to have the love and awe to do it properly while I'm down here. So I can't do it anymore. The only person who can create a dira b'tachtonim, a home here, is someone that's burning with fire. So then I have to, okay, let me burn with fire so I can do that. And I start burning with fire to be one with God, to connect. And then I'm rising up. But then the problem is, the kind of person who's just burning with fire and meditating all day and singing to themselves, they can't do Torah mitzvahs, right? So now that's it. They have to come back down, right? And it's only a person that's fed up with the physical world and wants to go beyond it that can now burn with this love like gold. And it's only a person that's really burning with love like gold that can come down into the world and really create a dir b'tachtonim. And then they get lost again. They're in the physical world and they can't, so they have to go up. And so the cycle goes. And that is the Magen David behind me. And that is so central to Judaism, so central to our path of meditation. That is the love like gold from the Alter Rebbe. Questions?
So that was your Nagun last week. You go up and you came back down. You brought it up a little bit more and then you brought it back down.
Yeah, the comment was that's the Nigun that we sang. Tzama lecha nafshi. A song goes up and down the same way, just like us in our lives, in our service. It rises up to be one with something else, this other place, and then it comes back down. Ya ya ma 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 ya ma ma, and that's the motion of a song, and that's why it's so inspiring, right? A song that's just one note. I mean, every now and then one of those works, but really that's not the essence of a song. A song is rising and falling. Yeah.
It's the struggle.
Struggle. Yeah. If you're a Beinoni, it's a struggle. Yeah.
Before we go on to the next chapter, is there anything kabbalistically that we should know about Shavuos?
You're prompting everything that I'm about to say. I was going to now we'll do a little thing on Shavuos.
Are you showing or something?
You and I, we're both going to New York at the same week. Like that's it. We're it's done. We're not. I'm like. Yeah. So Shavuos is Saturday night, starting the first day and Sunday, and it's a beautiful time when we read the Ten Commandments. So we'll be reading them here at a service. So our confirmation kids will be reading them Saturday night, a beautiful service also. Every synagogue does the same thing. They read, and you stand when you read the Ten Commandments. And that's the ritual side. And historically, this celebrates when we actually receive the Ten Commandments. But Kabbalistically, what do we say? We say this is not a reenactment of when we receive the commandments. It's not a reminder to know the Ten Commandments. There's actually a new Torah coming down. There's a new Torah being given on Shavuot that's different than last year's Torah. And we're receiving that new Torah. And that's why it's so important to be there and be standing around the Torah while it's being read, because something comes down. And how do we explain this? How do we explain that last year's Torah is going back up? That's the Shov. That Torah is now returning to its source. A new Torah is coming down. That's the Ratzo for the year, for the Torah. And it's a new Torah. It's something like, many people are watching online, and thanks for joining us. And if you want to join us live, please email mai@temple-israel.org. We'd love to have you here on the Zoom, on Facebook, watching in the future, but also here in the room. So all of you are on a device, and many of them, like my phone, have a, what's it called, the server thingy? The downloady, whatchamacallit,
Apps.
Not the apps. I'm forgetting the word for whoever's like sending a signal to my phone, right? So I've got a
Server?
not a server.
I don't know.
Help me out online. What's it called? The
Very.
Yeah? Provider, right? My cell phone provider. Okay. So I've got a cell phone provider, whoever is
Service.
service, cell phone service. You can see I don't have anything to do with what happens to my cell phone. Maya sets it up. I just open it and click on it, right? But I've got a provider that has towers that information is coming through, that is going as a whole company of employees that are working somewhere to make sure the information gets there on time, that is billing. There's a whole system, right? Technological, going through the air, waves that are right here with us, people working, financial. There's a whole system that is getting this information on my cell phone. And let's just open up anything. Okay, here you go. So this picture that's on my cell phone now, it's coming from somewhere. It has a source. What would happen if in the next 30 seconds I changed to another service? You know, at 11:25, I'm going to switch from whoever to whoever, right? No longer this, now that. Maybe there'd be a little blip, but then basically same picture, same information, looks exactly the same. And yet the source is maybe coming from an entirely different tower. It's an entirely different frequency that they're putting it on. I don't know anything about this, so if I'm wrong, forgive me, but I'm just guessing, right? There's another company somewhere, people working to make sure that it happens, entirely different people, right? They're getting my money, it's going to a different bank account. It's a whole different system, and it's just my cell phone. And if I didn't know anything about technology, if I was a 4-year-old, I'd say nothing's changed. How can you say something's changed? It's the same apps, the same everything, the same pictures, the same whatever. But it's not, it's new, it's different, it's coming from something else. And ultimately, that source that it's coming from is going to affect what's happening here in subtle ways. The Torah is like that. The Torah is coming from the infinite. The Torah comes down something like a zip file, and then each day we open up a new section, and each day someone learns something and has a new insight, and that comes out. And all that was in the zip file for the Torah for that year. But the Torah itself for that year spiritually is coming from a different place. And in fact, it's a higher place. Because now we finished last year and we're building on it. Last year is our new base, and now we're going up again. You have to go up spiritually. There's no other rule. So now this source is a higher source. We're bringing down a higher light. And everything we're going to read, everything we're going to learn, every bar mitzvah that chants here, they're reading now from this new Torah that's actually coming from an entirely different tower, a different company, a much higher source. And that's why someone asked me a question today at lunch, said, you know, if I already learned this, this parsha last year and I remember it, why should I learn it again? I said, you're not learning the same parsha. It's the same information on the screen, but it's entirely new. And there's different insights that are packed in it for you. There's different light, there's different knowledge. So thanks Marilyn, good to have you here. This is the time when we receive that, and if you really want to start off well and make sure your learning this year is at a high level, find yourself at a Torah service and to hear the Ten Commandments and celebrate Shavuot. Okay, we're going to finish with a little meditation. We'll see you next time. Hope you'll be back.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure. So we'll start chapter 51, which is the home stretch of the Tanya. 3 more chapters, one sugya, one subject. But let's finish off on our love like fire and our sense of Rats of Ashok. Just find yourself in a comfortable position. And just notice, perhaps you've stopped paying attention to your breath to the same extent for the past hour. Notice my breath has the exact same pattern as everything else, Rats of Ashok. Right? It goes out, upwards, back to its source, then comes back in, downwards to fill me. So the breathing in, that's the shov. The breathing out, that's the ratzo. The breathing in, that's the normal chesed love. The breathing out, that's the love like gold, the love based on gevura. Just expand that breath. Notice the beauty of it, how it's acting as a metaphor for everything we've learned. And notice also the aching that happens if you've breathed out and you can't breathe in, God forbid, for some reason, the aching you have to breathe back in. And when you're full, the desire there is to expel that air, to breathe out any toxins, so you have the next breath in. And our whole life long, this reminder of Rats of Ashok in our breath. Open up your breath into the 4 beautiful even stages. We'll count 4 to breathe in, 4 to stay full, 4 to breathe out, 4 to stay empty. Breathing in with me on 1, 2, 3. 4. So keep it in. 2, 3, 4. Back out. 2, 3, 4. Staying empty. 2, 3. Starting again. Breathing in. Stay full. Back out. Stay empty. Keep going your own pace. We're going to open up an understanding gateway, a Bina gateway. That'll be the empty space, the open space between the end of your out-breath and the beginning of your in-breath. So that empty space, when you're empty of breath, before your breath in again, that's your Bina gateway, your understanding gateway. Just allow that to open naturally in your own being. In that understanding gateway, let's invite this divine concept, this love like gold. The meditation is that the world simply does not exist. Never existed. The entire world never been here. In the higher truth, there's only God. Let that divine concept fill your understanding gateway. More and more detail, filling your mind like a cup of wine. As you contemplate on that divine concept, the world is not existent. Go deeper and deeper into the aspects and details, ramifications. Let your mind stay and go deeper. Let the concept widen, lengthen. Just notice any emotions that are ignited, any fire that is lit, any longing to leave the wick. If you're watching online, I invite you to remain here. Feel free to pause your device and continue for as long as you'd like. 10, 15, 20 minutes is ideal, or more. If you're in our class, we have our next scheduled event, so we'll open our eyes, wiggle our toes, come back to our place. I hope that you've enjoyed learning about Love Like Gold with us. It's a pleasure to learn with you. Next week we'll start the final section, not next week, next class, whenever it's scheduled. We'll start the final section of the Tanya. So I wish everybody a beautiful Shavuot. You should receive the Torah, the revealed and the hidden aspects of the new Torah for this year with joy, and have a wonderful Shavuot.